Hello. I am really glad to be here. This practice today is inspired by a little book I found on Amazon Kindle called 15-Minute Yoga Routine for Back Pain Relief by Alex Shine. He has a list of about 15 poses, which we are going to do almost all of today, maybe not 3 or 4 of them. And they're going to be almost in the same order that he recommended. And I thought if we can do them in Hatha, we can sure do them in Yin as well. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. Let's begin with a little grounding. I'm gonna stay seated, but I really wanna invite you to lay back. I love to begin a Yin practice in constructive rest with the knees bent and the feet on the floor. Sometimes my knees will knock together, sometimes the knees just point straight up, and sometimes I say, forget it, I wanna have my legs straight today. So, let's just take 3 deep breaths in through the nose and out the mouth, just clearing away any of the energy that we've already picked up or brought with us. And then if you can, closing the mouth and breathing through the nose alone. And beginning to just notice the rhythm of your breath to begin. We always start there, just noticing the rise and fall, being present with the movement in our bodies. And you might find that you begin to lengthen your inhale and your exhale. Moving gently into purposely extending your exhale longer than your inhale. Listening to the sound of your breath. As you continue to breathe in this quiet, relaxing way, take a few moments to think about your body this morning, how you've been feeling, what you've been doing, what you're hoping for, or what you wish you could feel. And then let that go. With your next exhale, just letting go of the expectations, the frustrations, and making some room, some space for love, acceptance, even forgiveness, and disappointment that comes with the acceptance of reality, the way things are. Keep breathing, extending that exhale, and take a moment to consider your thoughts. What have you been thinking about lately? What would you like to be thinking about? And just notice if those two things are different. Notice how we have choices. One of my favorite new quotes, I really feel like it's almost the heart of my yoga practice and teaching. It's by C.S. Lewis, and he says, we can't go back and rewrite the beginning, but we can definitely change the ending. And it's the same with our physical body, our thoughts, our lives, just recognizing where we are in this moment, letting go of the past and allowing ourselves to be open to a healthier, brighter future. Let's just take 3 more deep breaths. And just feeling the back of your body on the floor, wherever you are. Begin to open your fingers, maybe open and close them a little bit. You can squeeze your eyes shut and then open them. Maybe move your mouth a little bit in O's and Ahs. Move your chin. And if you've been on your back, you're going to bend your knees and roll on over to one side into seed pose. And gently come on up to seated and all the way to table. This is a good time to grab blankets or pillows to put under you if you're going to practice that for your back bend today. I'm going to curl my toes under and rock back a few times with my back nice and flat, just bringing a little bit of movement into the joints. Maybe coming up to a table pose and a few cat-cows. We're going to be practicing cat-cow as part of our shape practice today as well. Take a few deep breaths and then slowly begin to find your way down onto your belly. I like to put that blanket right under my hip bones, kind of more on the low belly rather than the upper belly. And you can get as high of a blanket as you like, or of course no blanket at all. Just take a few deep breaths as you settle in to your back bend this morning. So this is our Sphinx Pose, elbows under the shoulders. I like to keep my hands together. Some people like them straight out from the elbows. You could also spend some time in a higher back bend right away. You could go up into seal pose, or even a cobra, which is with the hands right next to your chest, stretching up or staying quite low. So we're gonna be engaging in a little more hatha poses in this practice today because of the way that I took my inspiration from this routine for the low back. As soon as someone says low back and yoga, our next thought should always be core. We're gonna be working the core. So whether you're in Sphinx pose or a more hatha shape, which could be a cobra, you're going to begin to breathe deeply into your low belly, really engaging the muscles of the diaphragm, which is the real heart of our core in our body. And as you breathe, maybe you can feel the back of your body expand as well. Feel free to make little adjustments along the way, stretching the legs out or moving the feet wider or closer together. Becoming conscious of the work that you're doing in your shoulders. You don't want to be sagging down, the chest close to the floor, and you don't want to be pushing up too high. You want to find that Goldilocks position, just right. Let's just find our breath again and feel our bodies as they begin to stretch this morning. Back pain is, of course, chronic pain in the back part of the body. Intensity of back pain can vary from mild to severe, and the affected area could also range from upper to lower back. It is found that 80% of adults have low back pain, and it is the 5th most frequent reason for doctor's visits. It is one of the most expensive musculoskeletal disorders. Research shows that the largest category of medical claims involves back pain, and it is one of the most cited reasons for absenteeism and disability. Back pain is a public health problem of epidemic proportions, says Alex Shine in his tiny book called 15-Minute Yoga Routine for Back Pain Relief. Let's just take one more deep breath here. And I'm going to begin to open the elbows and come all the way down onto the belly. Just nice and slow, allowing the back to gently release from the back bend. We'll take several deep breaths here. We're watching for that low back stretch to slowly dissipate. As you feel the stretch beginning to disappear, you might begin to rock your legs a little bit side to side.
You might come up onto your toes and see how that feels. Or even bend the knees, maybe making some circles with your feet. All of this is optional. You can always just remain quite still. As time continues to pass and you don't really feel that low back bend anymore, you're going to slowly begin to push yourself up to table pose. Take your time. Feel free to sink those hips back, stretching out the low back, the upper back. Try not to round the spine at all here. Try to keep it long and straight. Take a breath or two. And we're going to move slowly, as always in our yin practice, into our next sequence, which is simply a cat and a cow. So this is actually in his routine. I love this. Table, hands under shoulders, knees under hips. The toes can be curled or the feet can be flat. As we round the spine, tuck the chin, look down between your knees, and tuck that tailbone, but soften the glutes. Make that buttocks really soft. You can even swing a little bit, just little tiny bit side to side, keeping the back round as you take 3 more breaths. And moving in slow motion, starting to lift the head and the tailbone as the belly slides downward into that cow shape. Now here I'm going to squeeze the glutes as I'm dropping the belly and rolling the shoulders back. Neck is long. 3 deep breaths here. Remember to try to squeeze the glutes. You can let them go whenever you need to. As you finish that 3rd breath, we're releasing the glute muscles and rounding the spine again, pulling the belly button gently up through the backbone. 3 breaths here. So we're just going to do this 3 times, 3 breaths. Softening the glutes. And you're ready to rock the other way. Tip that tailbone, gently squeeze the glutes, lift the gaze, sag the belly, and breathe. I'm just gonna rock the other way. I might be breathing faster than you, so take your time. Softening the glutes in the rounded spine. This is the last time we'll round the spine for 3 breaths. And I know this is one of the absolute best things to do for a tired low back. Just really articulating and massaging those vertebrae and all the little pads between them. And one more time to sag the belly and gently squeeze the glutes. Maybe just a little engagement, but lift the neck up out of the shoulders. And just relax into table pose. I'm gonna move my blanket out of the way that I had for Sphinx. And as you crawl your knees forward, we're gonna bring our legs around and lay all the way back. Take your time, moving really slowly to find that spine nice and flat on the floor and really let it soften. You can have your knees bent or your legs long. You could rock your knees or keep those legs still. You could even put your hands on your belly and just feel the rise and fall of the breath. Just 2 more deep breaths here. And take a deep inhale, and on the exhale, bring the knees in toward the belly and wrap your hands around those shins if you can, or if you want to, you can link your fingers and get them right around the shins so that the tailbone comes off the floor. That's what we're looking for. We are rounding out that spine, that low back, giving it a deep stretch. We're going to be here for a couple of minutes, so just keep breathing and readjust so that you're able to breathe, of course. And if you like to, or if you know it's okay for your neck, you could add, as you exhale, squeezing those glutes and bringing the head toward the knees. Maybe hold for a breath or two and let the head come down. This is that optional part of the hatha, a little more hatha part of our yin yang practice. Hatha meaning movement, more yang. But if you prefer, if you're like me, I like to just stay still, especially in yin, but some people really appreciate a little bit more movement in their practice. So follow your heart and your intuition and your breath. Notice where that breath has gone. Because I've squeezed my thighs onto my belly, my ribs are expanding more with the breath. That's good for that fascia. Keep breathing deep. We have about 30 seconds left here in this shape. Let's just take 3 or 4 more deep breaths. And we'll slowly begin to release the legs. You might even push them slowly, letting the tiptoes touch the floor. And then the soles of the feet come down. Pause for a breath, thinking about whether you need to move side to side or you're ready to stretch your legs out one by one into our mini Shavasana, our rest between the poses, and focus some of your awareness on those hip creases. They should be feeling a little cooler, maybe some tingling because of that compression. Now the new energy is being rushed through, washing away that old energy in the joints. I've heard the hips called the emotional junk drawers of the body. It's where we hold a lot of our fear and anxiety. It's where we keep our core muscles so that it affects everything we do. Feel free to take a few more breaths and just rest. As you lose the sensation in the hips, whether it's the coolness or the warmth or the tingling, maybe begin to wiggle your toes, move your feet a little bit. Feel free to take your arms over your head and take a full body stretch, arching the back up away from the mat. Breathing into those ribs. When you're ready, you can bring your feet back to the floor again. Maybe rock the knees a little bit. That's so good for maintaining good fluid in the joint, in the hip joint. And we'll move into our wind relieving shape, one of the best poses we have for our low back. I'm going to pull my left knee in first. It doesn't matter which one you pull in. And just pull in one of the knees and stretch the other leg out if that feels okay for your low back. If you'd prefer to have that knee bent, you can do that as well. And then you'll come back to your breath, and you might find that you want to link your hands over the shin, or you might want to pull the knee a little wider. Maybe kind of get comfy. We're going to be here for, again, about 2 minutes. Feel free to wiggle your toes. If you ever start to find your toes falling asleep or getting tingly, that means you need to move a little bit. We don't want things to fall asleep. That's a little bit too much circulation cut off. And then also, as an option, you could begin to hover the long leg off the floor, engaging that core.
coming into a little more of that yang or hatha feeling inside of our yin practice. And you'll know whether you need to hover that leg, because your low back will tell you that it's either too tired or it needs some more relaxation. Move the breath downward toward the belly. Feel free to close your eyes. Think of beautiful places or some gratitude. Sending healing thoughts into that low back. We'll just take 3 more deep breaths with this side. And then I'm going to take a deep breath in, and on the exhale, I'm going to switch my legs. Draw the long leg in and stretch this left leg out, pulling that right knee in now. Just taking my time to kind of set up on this side, see how it feels. The other leg, of course, again, can hover or just relax on the floor. Continually using our body as a way to be very present, because our bodies are always present. It's just our mind that moves around the world without us. So as we're resting here, we're squeezing in the leg. Maybe you can feel a compression in the hip or a little bit of energy in the arms, or you're hovering the leg and you can feel your core. Just concentrate on that feeling, developing a little bit of interoception, that awareness of what it feels like inside our bodies. Just about 30 seconds left again. Let's just take 4 more breaths. And on the next exhale, I'm going to bring both feet to the floor, bending the knees, and then decide if I want to stay with my knees bent or stretch the legs back out for my little Shavasana before we move on to our next shape. So just resting and feeling the residual of that stretch. Again, we're just watching to see when that sensation starts to disappear. Some days it lasts a little longer, sometimes it's quicker. Just adding in movement whenever you like. I'm going to bring my feet to the floor and just rock my knees a little bit, side to side, making sure I've got lots of juice around my hips. We are going to take a long time to come up to standing in the middle of our yin practice. I love throwing this in. I'm going to roll over onto seed pose first. I think I just like to rebel against the norm of yin, where we're just sitting on the floor the whole time. And in fact, in the routine for the low back from that little book that I found, he has you stand in mountain pose, and you'll see how engaging it actually is as we make our way there. I'm going to push up to table pose, kind of off the side of my mat. I'm going to crawl back on my mat again. Feel free to rock the hips, take a few cat-cows, and then maybe stretch up into down dog. Or if you prefer, you can just step forward from table, one leg at a time. I'm going to take a moment as I step to the middle of the mat to enjoy a little forward fold, letting my back really stretch out, but my knees are nice and bent, so I'm not pulling too hard with my hamstrings. I like to grab my elbows, let my head hang, and take a few breaths. And eventually my elbows can come to my thighs, nice supported forward fold. And then hands to the thighs as I push my shoulders up and come to standing. Nice. Okay. Now for mountain pose. So let's start with our feet a little closer together. You can even let them touch. My knees kind of bump into each other, so I'm going to step a little wider after I bring my toes together so that I can find a really nice, comfortable, but fairly close together leg position. And then I'm going to rock back onto my heels, lift my toes, and take 2 deep breaths, engaging the whole front of the legs. Good. And then we rock the toes down, and as the toes touch the floor, we lift the pubic bone just a little bit, or pull the low belly in. Good. And lift the chest, open it up. I'm opening the shoulders. Good. Feel free to roll them a little bit. And then I'm going to lift with the back of my head, the base of my skull. I want to lift it up toward the sky. So I can feel my spine lifting up as I lift the base of the skull. Good. And my legs are engaged. But then I'm going to press into my toes and squeeze my knees and my thigh muscles up, maybe my glutes a little bit, as I start to inhale all the air, pulling up through the soles of my feet to the crown of my head. And then on the exhale, I'm going to let everything release and relax as the air flows back down into the floor. And I'm going to do that 3 or 4 times. Inhaling, pressing the toes in, squeezing all the muscles as the air flows up. And then slowly exhaling and letting everything slide back down. Good. So we're just engaging that core, lengthening the spine. Good. Maybe 1 more of those deep breaths. And then I'm going to just find a balanced engagement in my feet, kind of balance between toes and heels. And I'm going to inhale, the arms raise up, maybe the fingertips touch. Exhale, they float back down. And I'm going to do this 5 or 6 times just with my own rhythm of my breath. This is a nice time to also kind of challenge our balance, maybe looking down at a spot on the floor, maybe about the length of our body ahead of us, or seeing what happens if we close our eyes. That always throws me off a little bit, challenges the balance, makes me use my feet. And it just feels good in the middle of a yin class to move our arms, to really engage the core. Just 1 more sun breath, fingers touch, and the hands slide down. Good. And as my hands come down, I'm going to start to bend my knees, coming into chair pose. And at first, it's just going to be a supported chair. My hands are on my thighs, feels pretty doable. I'm going to pull in that low belly and engage that core again. This is on the list of poses that he had. I love that. It's so strengthening. I like to squeeze my glutes and my thighs, really getting them strong. And feel free to be in chair pose and come out a few times, just engaging and releasing at your own rate. And I'm going to make my way back to the center of my mat so that the next time I do my chair pose, I might go deeper. I might just stay where I was before, really engaging, or just moving slowly, transitioning back down to the ground. Feel free to enjoy that hanging forward fold once again.
Maybe another few cat-cows. Cat-cow is some of the very best movement for that low back. It just really distributes the pressure and the fluid in that spinal cord. As you find your way onto your back, make sure a block is within reach and a strap. We're going to move into a little bridge pose. Another one that is so important for the spine, for spinal strength and core strength, but we don't have to go there quite yet. If you're still enjoying your transition, please continue to take your time. If you need a child's pose, feel free. You can always do a child's pose on your back by pulling your knees into your chest, getting that low back stretching out. And what I'd like to propose is that we keep our block nearby so it's ready for us, but we start our bridge pose with engagement. You'll know when you're ready and you'll plant your feet, squeeze those glutes and lift the hips up off the floor. Beginning that deep breathing, softening in the neck. The quads are engaged here. Really beautiful place to feel all of the amazing musculature of the legs, the core, the back. And you have your block right there ready for you. So when you start to get tired, and you definitely will because we want to be here for about 2 or 3 minutes, you're going to just slide the block right up under, put it under the tailbone, and then let the body rest on the block, beginning to let go of most of the engagement of the musculature, and let yourself settle in to this beautiful inversion. Now, if you had any kind of blood pressure issue and you're on blood pressure medication, this pose in and of itself is good blood pressure medication. So you might not need to do it as long or even as high. You might just put a little blanket under your hips, something like that. It's a great option. If you have any eye issues with pressure in those teeny tiny veins, then you never want to do any kind of inversions. You always want to keep the head above the heart to keep your eyes safe. Moving down with the breath back down into the belly. Trying to keep the nose centered and pointing upward. Rolling those shoulder blades back, a long neck. Smoothing out the forehead. Readjusting the feet if you need to. Just breathing smooth and slow. See if there's anywhere that you're holding that you can just gently let go. Letting the breath slide upward now instead of downward toward the belly. It inhales upward and exhales down. Feels good. 2 or 3 more breaths. I'm going to take my time, bringing that block out from under my hips and letting the rest on the floor. And there's many different ways you could rest your legs, maybe soles of the feet together, knees apart, or the legs stretched out,
or the knees knocking together. So many good options. Maybe the arms can go up. And take a few more breaths. Feel free to wiggle and rock a little bit whenever you like. I'm gonna bring my knees into my chest just once or twice, rocking a little bit. Some people like to bring their nose up toward their knees, squeezing that core, stretching out that low back, lifting the tailbone a little bit. As your hips make their way back to the floor, just letting them soften. Feel free to rock a little bit. We'll move ourselves nice and slow into our figure 4 shape. So keeping one foot on the floor, the other ankle comes up and crosses in front of the thigh. And for me at first, this feels like enough. And you might even just take the block and slide it up under the foot that's on the floor. That might feel good, just starting to engage the outer hip muscle of the bent knee leg, the leg that's in front. And I like to press the knee away. I like to stay here for a couple of breaths. And all of you probably know that you can come into whatever level of expression really works for your body. Maybe it's just here. Maybe it's holding on to the shin, drawing it inward. Maybe it's sliding the hand through the legs, grabbing the opposite thigh, keeping the foot on the low down or up in the air. And I like to rock a little to get my tailbone just slightly up off the floor here. And I don't want there to be too deep of a stretch, because in yin, we don't want to go all the way to the edge. We want to be able to stay a little ways from the edge so that the body really begins to feel safe. And then really lets go slowly over time. And as we begin to think through our lives and how we feel about them and what we've done in our lives and our physical bodies, how they've responded, remember that quote in the beginning about how we can't go back and change things, but we can make a difference now in our own lives. Our choices now are important. Let's just take one more breath on this side. And bringing the foot down if it was up, and uncrossing the legs. Feel free to stretch the legs out or rock a little bit. We're just going to take 4 or 5 deep breaths before we try the other side. Wiggling your toes, making your way back up, feet on the floor, knees bent. And if you had the block under one foot, you might scoot it over. We're just going to cross the other ankle in front of the other thigh. Take a moment with the foot on the floor, kind of making those choices for ourselves. And the funny thing is, we don't always know what's best for ourselves until we try it. And so I encourage you to explore and be curious about what works for you. Eventually, of course, we always look for a little bit of stillness, a little bit of staying with the shape. Our yin practice can really offer an amazing level of healing. Let's just relax and let go, and let the breath go wherever it wants to go. Maybe closing the eyes and letting the eyeballs roll down toward the cheekbones.
Imagining your brain quietly settling down. Letting your thoughts be focused in this moment with this inhale and exhale. When the mind floats away, gently draw it back to where you feel the sensation in your body. Our bodies are eternally present. Simply by focusing on them, we bring our mind and our thoughts into the present moment. Let's take 3 more breaths here. You can take your time moving in slow motion, bringing the feet back to the floor. Feel free to rock or stretch out. Taking a long time, lots of deep breaths as you roll over to seed pose. Checking in with that low back. Just taking note of how you feel. And you have 2 choices for the next shape. If you have any kind of osteoporosis, you're going to roll back onto your back and look for your strap. And wrap that strap around both feet and press them up into the air for a lying down staff pose. If you know that your bones don't have any osteoporosis issues, then you're going to press yourself up to seated, stretch your legs out, and wrap the strap around the balls of your feet, coming into seated staff using the strap. And even if you don't have osteoporosis issues, you might want to stay on your back, which is totally fine with me. Okay, so once you get into the position, you're going to choose what to do with your arms. I like to have mine stretched out. Some people prefer to have the elbows bent, roll the shoulders back, and really open that heart. Whether you're on your back or seated, that's going to feel pretty good to the chest. And as you're breathing, you're just checking in with the backs of the legs. You might need a little bend in your knees. Bending the knees actually feels really good because then you can kind of dig your heels into the floor and bring your belly closer to your thigh, getting a really nice hamstring stretch, lifting that heart. Eventually, if you have no osteoporosis issues, you might begin to walk your hands down the strap, maybe toward the ankles, the shins, allowing the low back and mid back and upper back to gently round. But if you have any kind of osteoporosis, you never want to be seated and rounding forward. That is the worst thing we can do for our backs. But those of us who have those solid bones need not really worry or fear. What we need to do, though, is be fully present in our bodies, being aware if we need a little bend in the knees, a little release somewhere. And moving that breath down into the belly once again. Of course, you can also do this pose standing, which we did a little bit. That standing forward fold, Uttanasana. Let your brain really focus on the muscles that are getting stretched here, that gentle pull. I can really feel it on the backs of my legs, around the hips, and up that low back. Maybe even the soles of the feet get a little tingly. Let your awareness drift toward your heart. Notice that your heart is held here in this forward fold. Even on your back, your arms are reaching upward. Your heart is cradled. Just take 2 more deep breaths, loving your heart. And lead with the back of your head as you start to bring yourself up if you're seated. If you're on your back, you'll just slowly begin to bend the knees and take the strap away. We're not going to need the strap anymore. We can just lay it to the side as we make our way in slow motion, each piece mindful as we lay back on our backs once again. And if you have been already on your back, you might stretch your legs out or rock those knees. Listen to your body's intuition. Taking deep belly breaths. Our final shape before Shavasana will be a twist. So it's kind of up to you what twist you like best. Gently bringing the soles of the feet back to the floor. One of the safest twists I know is to lift the hips and scoot them over to one edge of the mat as both knees rock over toward the other side. And you might stretch a leg out and grab a toe, or you might twist your knees. Some people really love that deep, deep twisting. Opening the heart, spreading the arms out. The thing to watch out for here is pain or pressure, too much pressure in that low, low back, right above the tailbone. Instead, what you want to feel is a stretch across the ribs, a stretch across that hip point, around the waist area, and then placing those arms where they feel good so you get that wide open chest. Oh, breathe so deep into your lungs, expanding them outward to the sides. And the head can go anywhere it feels good to you, pointing straight up, looking in the same direction as your knees, or away. Imagine your back sinking just slightly into the floor, getting a little deeper into the mat. Notice if you're holding on anywhere, like a finger or a toe, or maybe your jaw. Can you soften again? If while you're resting here you start to feel pain, feel free to come up out of the shape and readjust. One thing I didn't mention is sometimes a block between the knees feels really good to help support that top hip. And we'll take 3 more deep breaths. as you feel ready, bringing those knees back up, realigning the hips, maybe even stepping the legs long for a moment or pulling them into your chest before you take the other side of your twist. Moving kindly and mindfully as you adjust, recognizing if there's a need for a prop, support. Letting the breath drift down into the belly again and again. Helping the twist with the breath. Maybe one more deep breath on this side. And making your way into your Shavasana. I always want to invite you to put your legs up over a chair or a couch or up a wall. If you're in the middle of a room, you can slide a block under your hips and put your legs in the air. Or you can simply lift your tailbone, set it back down, and stretch one leg at a time, out long, and let go. We have a full 4 or 5 minutes here to just do nothing at all. Allowing our bodies the time that they need to restore. The slow and gentle movement of our yin practice, that deep stillness, communicates directly with that parasympathetic nervous system, telling it that it's okay to turn back on all the beautiful systems in the body that we need to grow stronger and healthier, and to change the ending of our stories, to change the ending of this day's story, this moment. As you settle in, take those deep, long breaths, lengthening the exhale, maybe even resting in the quiet of the emptiness at the end of the breath. And as I usually do, I love to end our yin practice with the classic yin prayer. In English, it means, may we be protected together. May we be nourished together. May we work together with the energy of greatness. And may our lives be filled with brilliance and light. May there be no ego between us. Peace, peace, peace. Mahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. A few more deep breaths in through the nose and out the mouth. Feel free to sigh. Beginning to bring little movements of fingers and toes, maybe wrists and ankles. Being kind and gentle. Breathing in love and breathing out love. If you want to stay laying down, feel free to just bring your hands to your heart. Bow your chin down to that beautiful light inside of you, and remember that light in each of the other beings on this planet as we say Namaste. Thank you so much for practicing with me today. Please continue to subscribe, like, and share these videos with your friends. Have a beautiful day.